It's that time of the week again, slightly earlier this week, but we're going to look ahead to tomorrow's racing now, taking place on ITV, and perhaps not the headline race in the UK this week that we've had in recent weeks, but we do have some Irish Classic action.
Well, let's be honest, I've drawn the short straw here, haven't I? I've got to deal with the impossible Super Sprint, an impossible new handicap, and then a difficult to fathom Irish Oaks. So whichever way you cut it, Nick, I've drawn the short straw, but we're going to battle through it. And it is really interesting weekend, and I was just sort of glancing through the other shoulder races on different cards, and it's really interesting stuff at this time of year. We've got various races where the 3-year-olds are taking on the older horses, the Aphrodite Stakes for fillies at Newmarket. We're not doing it here, but the Hackwood is really interesting because it's got a few Commonwealth Cup flops like Invincible Army and especially Equilateral up against some older, harder knocking sprinters. So loads of fascinating racing all week. The best place to review all the action will be with the handicappers update, ratings update on Monday with Timeform, because there's so much to get through and loads to be clarified and quantified. But we're going to do our best to trundle our way through the 27-runner Super Sprint to kick things off.
And I think there could be a record here, 27 seconds, because Equilateral could really be the right angle into the race.
Oh, you like that? No, I'll give you that one. That was one of your better ones, definitely.
I've completely got all excited in my puns and forgotten where I am now. That's it, I've completely lost the plot. We're going to start with the Super Sprint, as you say. You can blame Matt Gardner last week's debutant for the draw. Thought we'd give him a nice week to bed him in. Enough. So the pro has got the tricky race. 27 runners, all 2-year-olds, and a bit of a difference. I was looking at the recent winners of this, and a bit of a mixed bag for punters. We've had 2 of the last 5 renewals have been won by favourites, but along with that, some big price winners as well.
Yeah, but the biggest price is what, 28 to 1.
28,
and it is just sort of a reminder that even though we're dealing in a huge field of 2-year-olds, essentially it feels like we're dealing off the bottom of the pack because you don't know the true abilities as yet of each of the individual horses. But because a lot of these horses have run 3, 4, 5 and 6 times amongst them, we have got a good impression and interpretation of their abilities, and then setting the framework, the unusual framework of this Super Sprint where your weight is determined, yes, in part by the races you win, but more so by how much you cost at the sales. It means that you do get, it's not quite the mixed bag, it's not quite the free-for-all as some might suggest. There is a little league within a league within the 27 runners. So, for example, of the 27 runners, there are 10 of them who break the 100 barrier on Timeform adjusted ratings, and that's like a mini league in itself. And then I think we've got the also runs who it is hard to make a case for. They're going to have to find a lot of improvement from somewhere. So you can narrow it down in sense of look at the Timeform ratings and see which ones have a realistic chance of winning based on what they've shown so far. And then there is another little interesting way into the race, because 27 runners are obviously spread right across the track. And it's not necessarily the draw in historical terms, it's where the fast horses and where the quality horses are. So the first 7 on Timeform ratings, this is where the draw, and listen to this, 17, 10, 12, 16, 13, 20 and 23. So it does seem like middle to high, that's where you've got your clutch of higher rated horses. That's where the power and the concentration of power is going to be generated. So I think there's 2 really interesting ways in with the Super Sprint this year. That's to concentrate on those who've shown the most, and then within that, we've got them in a little clutch, which is sort of middle to stand side as you look down the track. So I think that's where the power base is going to be. And to that end, most of those horses drawn low are going to be a bit marooned, you'd think, because they're either not quick enough themselves or are not got horses around them quick enough to take them into the race. So I'm thinking that this might be a little arrowhead front to left-hand side as you look down the track where the main players are going to be.
I'm looking at the market here, 11 to 2 at the moment, Kinks and Little Kim. Does the Timeform ratings agree with the market?
Yeah, not completely so, but those 2 are in that batch and not at the top. We'll come to the Timeform top rated in a second, but let's talk about Kinks, because that one was rolling along earlier in the season, won 2 out of his first 3, was unlucky in the National Stakes, and then sort of got his backside handed to him at Royal Ascot. But a lot of these have been to Royal Ascot and not quite good enough, understandably so. That's why they're in the Super Sprint. He was 6 to Shang it was in the Norfolk, but he's got lots to like in terms of he's really professional, he's really polished, He's really fast as well, which helps obviously with the Super Sprint in that he's been held up the last twice when he's gone up in grades, but when he was doing his winning earlier, it was from the front. And because of his draw in that clutch, it makes all sorts of sense. So I wouldn't necessarily have him such a short price, but I'd have him certainly in the first 3 or 4 in the market. And then Little Kim is really interesting because you just don't usually get group winners in the Super Sprint. Normally it's horses on the way up to group level possibility. But Little Kim won in France. It was a Group 3. It was a bit of a substandard Group 3. She beat a horse called Chelsea Cloisters, who there was a lot of talk about her from Wesley Ward. She ran in the Queen Mary, didn't fire there. Little Kim led them all last time out at Deauville. She's paid for a little bit in that she has to carry top weight, but then again she is a group winner. So those two, they're only in the mix. They're not necessarily ahead of the pack in Timeform ratings, but it's easy to see why they're towards the top of the market.
She's going to have to carry a penalty for that.
Yeah.
Is that a sort of thing that is a really big thing for a 2-year-old to
It's
do?
perhaps not, because the penalty counts for more when you're in sort of equal company, in the sense of if you've got a bit more weight to carry than horses of equal ability, then you are in trouble. But when by and large you're dealing with inferior horses and you're just giving them weight, it's a little bit less of a strain, and quality can and often does count. So I don't think it's that big an issue. It's just the question of, she won a Group 3 last time, which on the face of it reads really well in the context of a race like this, but it wasn't a high-end Group 3, and obviously looking at the depth of this race, she's got a bit more on than the market might suggest in terms of both her and Kinks.
Third in the market at the moment is Tin Hat, one for the conspiracy theorists. Finished 5th in the Windsor Castle last time.
Good 5th, and shown lots of speed in the process. Ed Greatrex and Eve Johnson Houghton. And this horse is much like sort of Kinks, is really well prepared and well rounded and well readied now for a combat like this. Shown a lot of speed through 5 races, and that 5th in the context of this race again was a really good effort in the Windsor Castle. So he's another one, yes, certainly to throw in the mix. He's drawn in 12, so he's in that batch, and he's very much like Red Balloons and Kinks and Little Kim, in the sense of horses drawn in the right place with the right sort of profile. So it just sort of leans on the market for which way you go. But I did mention Red Balloons there, and this is the Timeform top rated, and just the very basic side-by-side glance of Timeform ratings compared to the market, it does stand out a bit that Red Balloons is available at 9 or 10 to 1.
Yeah.
Richard Fahey won it last year. I think he might have won it a few years, but he certainly won it last year. And Red Balloons, there's 3 things to like in particular. Number 1 is it's trained by Fahey, who likes this race, who likes a pound note, and is going to have this revved up. Number 2, it's got 8 stone 6. So it's one of the best in at the weights, and it's going to get, 11 pound off Little Kim. And when you're dealing with that sort of weight swing, it is going to hurt Little Kim to try and give a horse like Red Balloons that much weight. And the third point is that when you think back to the Queen Mary, she was still bang there a furlong out. It was only in the last 150 yards that class told in terms of the other fillies in and around her, and she was just a bit overwhelmed in the finish. But encouragingly, she's rebounded out of that already and since won at Nottingham. So for me, Red Balloons, and for Timeform in terms of our interpretation, this is the one who's the best in at the weights according to the form, and yet she's probably only 4th in the market. So that makes her a sort of automatic default pick and say, yeah, actually that is a good price based on all the data for all the horses so far.
What about Society Queen by Society Rocks? Had plenty of speed, but
yeah,
at the same time has only just won at 1 to 4 last time.
And was all out to win at 1 to 4. Obviously was dealing with Richard Fahey again. And I don't know, that was a cat trick, wasn't it? And when you're dealing in fillies who've been in group races, who've been to Royal Ascot, who've got 4 and 5 runners, in my mind I just worry about Society Queen, or a horse like Society Queen in a race like this, who's had just 2 runs behind her, in the sense that it's going to be a bit of a shock to the system. A race like this is just a burn up and a powder keg in terms of they just go hell for leather from the off. And you have to be switched on, and you have to be really polished and professional just to hold your own. And when you see a horse like her who's run just twice and who's scrambled home at Ayr, it is a little bit worrying in the sense that I'm not sure she'll be fully prepared for this. Just as an outsider, there is another horse in here called On The Stage, who, when you go back to her debut, she was really impressive, and she's been campaigned like a really good filly since then, but there's some sort of screw loose with her. She capitulated at York. She ran better last time, but still flashed her tail markedly. it's one of those where she's got loads of talent but loads of temperament alongside her, but this is the sort of racing environment which could well stimulate her and keep that temperament in check. So like I said, almost in terms of Society Queen, is that this race is going to make some curl up and it's going to make others step forward. And there is just a chance that with a race like this, a horse like On the Stage forgets to mess around and just remembers to run. And in that sense, just looking at her price, On the Stage is one horse who I'd say she's probably got more talent than the odds suggest. It's just about her mindset on the day. But in terms of all the form we know so far, we can actually say, Nick, that this Red Balloons is a pretty good bet, despite the strength and depth of the race, because she's got the best form. She's from a really good team in terms of Fahey and Hannigan. She's been through the mill in big events, and she's got the speed for this and just 8 to 6. So Red Balloons at 10 to 1. I think that makes sense.
With a potential each way save run on the stage.
I wouldn't back her each way. I'd have just throw one little chip on the stage and just hope and think that her mind might be right for the day.
20 to 1 on the stage at the moment. So we'll move on now to a brand new race actually on the card, the Stayers Handicap over 2 miles, and it's good to see a full quota as well. 18 runners heading to post, and plenty of different form in here. We use familiar names as well. On top of the market is Stratham, who ran a really good race at Ascot last time, was 3rd in the Ascot Stakes.
Yeah, we can talk about this one's profile and form in the sense that it was with John Gosden, lightly raced hurdler for Willie Mullins, and you get the sense that Willie Mullins always thought that this might be more a flat horse than a hurdle horse, and that's why he sort of tread carefully over the winter and primed this horse for Royal Ascot. Did really well to finish 3rd in the Ascot Stakes, given they didn't go hard there. It was difficult to come from off the pace, and he finished best out of the principals and came from furthest back out of the principals. So all of that's in his favour, but the most in his favour is it's owned by Tony Bloom. And he wins all these sort of races, these big valuable handicaps wherever they are. So I think it's just, we can move on to the Irish Oaks. No, but it's well found in the market. That's the point, isn't it? We've got a really strong race, strength in depth, loads of different form lines, loads of different ages as well. But Stratham, it's an easy sell in terms of who he's trained by, who he's owned by, but moreover, the feeling at Royal Ascot that this horse was just sort of scratching the surface of his ability.
We've sort of got one with a surface profile, second in the market with Khalid, because he's still sort of riding the wave of last year, still looks progressive.
Yeah, only had 8 races in his life. Owen Burrows this is his normal MO, just take it steady, let the horse tell the trainer when he's ready to progress, and when he does let them loose, they tend to go in spurts like he did last year. And I thought his 5th was fine on his reappearance. He was off 10 months to that. Prior to that, he was behind Amazing Red at Newmarket, and he just got the feeling that was setting him up for the summer. And this is his first big port of call, going up to 2 miles for the first time, but the way that he's progressed as he's gone up in trips over shorter distances makes you believe that he's going to be well suited by it, and he's got cheap piece on for the first time, just to add and foster that feeling that this is probably his biggest day. So it's a 2 mile handicap. Just to qualify, you have to have done a lot, and so we've got horses who've spent their lives getting this high in the handicap. He's a little bit different in the sense that he's only had 8 runs. He finds himself in this quality of competition without showing all of his hands so far. He's still got the impression there's a little ace up his sleeve with Kalub, and that's what makes him so interesting.
And then we've got a bit of a fly in the ointment next in the market, and Almagared, who's a 3-year-old, only had 3 starts. What does it tell you about him in general that he's coming here?
Well, it's almost impossible for a 3-year-old to get in a race like this at this stage of the season, because they're normally, if you're this good, you're normally busying yourself towards the St. Ledger, frankly. He was 4th in the Queen's Vase, wasn't he? And a really strong Queen's Vase, because it was won by Kew Gardens, who's won a Group 1 since. We had Nelson, we had Southern France. It felt and smelt like a really strong Queen's Vase, and the early evidence suggests that it was. And because it was only Almagared.
I pronounced it wrong.
No, I don't know.
Almagared.
It was only his 3rd start, wasn't it? Because he was unraced as a 2-year-old and just had a debut run, won a maiden at Chepstow, and then did this. So he's very unusual in the sense of a different type of horse to anything else in the field. His profile says one thing, but the fact that he could do that in the Queen's Vase means that the handicapper's got a big area at which to have a stab at, And a mark of 104 is very, very demanding for a 3-year-old in this sort of company. So the profile's right, you get the impression from what he did at Ascot that the trip's going to be right, but for me, he's a bit of a false price, and it's a little bit over-factored on his profile and the fact it's John Gosden, rather than the nuts and bolts of his mark compared to his form, because actually, here's the thing, he's bottom rated on Timeform, and it's nothing to do with us underappreciating that level of form. It's just reflective of the brutal nature of 3-year-olds going into races like this and what it takes to get in.
Can the amount, he's going to get a lot of weight, tons and tons of it, is that work in his favour at all? Is that just speaks volumes of the step up he's got to make?
Yeah, I think so. I think that he's got to make a big step up. Going over 2 miles will help in terms of the weight, the actual real-time weight he's got to carry. But this is something new for him in terms of the level of competition that he's going to face, the number within the field, and also the standard of the horse that he's up against collectively. So I'd be worried about that horse. I was only a 3-year-old going into a race like this.
Next in is Amazing Red, who was in front of Kaloob 2 starts ago. And I remember talking about him going into the Northumberland Plate. Yeah. He was a bit down the field that day. Yeah,
and he went off only 11-2 for Withhold's Northumberland Plate, for Tony Bloom Northumberland Plate. It was an odd sort of race, wasn't it, the way it developed, because Withhold just grabbed it by the scruff of the neck early and never let it go, and Amazing Red was probably ridden too far back. I think that if Jim Crowley could have ridden that race again, he would have kept him handy. Not that he'd have had a prayer anyway against a group horse like Withhold, but I think that was more a bump in the road rather than the end of his road in terms of his progress. And he was really good at Newmarket before that, and perhaps it is a case of getting back on the turf and sort of lessons learned from the Northumberland Plate that he'll put into practice a better showing here. And I think that's the one thing to keep in mind, that he went off only 11-2 against Withhold in the Northumberland Plate. And what price is he here?
Anything for about 7s to 10s.
Yeah, and if he'd have come here straight from Newmarket, you'd be dealing in, well, he'd be pushing Stratum for favouritism, I'd say. So it's about forgiveness, that, and I'd be happy to forgive that based on the way he was motoring along previously and the fact that the Northumberland Plate was an odd sort of race as it developed. But that actually, Nick, does bring us to a horse who I do think's overpriced, well overpriced in this. And when you think back to that Newmarket race, which he won decisively, that made him 11-2 second favourite of the Northumberland Plate, it was a sort of similar standard race to this. And yeah, Amazing Red was the moral winner, the clear-cut winner, the true winner, the best horse in the race. But in second was Golden Wolf. And Golden Wolf, that was just the latest in a series of really strong seconds by him. Before that, he finished second at Epsom to that Dash of Spice, the Ellsworth horse who won again at Royal Ascot. And I was looking at the Golden Wolf's pedigree, because this is going to be his first go at 2 miles, and I just thought, watching him, that he's a horse with a high cruising speed, and I wasn't convinced that, well, 2 miles might not be for him. But when you look at his pedigree, he's got Yates in his family line. His half-brother ended up over hurdles, having won over a mile 3/4 on the flat. So there are certain dots to be joined with Golden Wolf to make you think, hang on, this might just be what he's wanted all his life. And again, rather like Amazing Red, we've got a lesser run to forgive, but in his case, it came in the Old Newton Cup, and again, that was a bit of an odd race as it developed. Not much got into it, and he was held up a bit further back than ideal that day as well. So strong similarities between him and Amazing Red in terms of the way they were going previously, the strength of that form, a lesser run to forgive, but there are excuses. And I just think that the discrepancy in price, considering their relationship at Newmarket, is a bit too big for me. And I think that Golden Wolf might even improve now he's gone up to 2 miles, just given that surface reading of his pedigree. So I think that he, at the odds, Nick, is the one that I'm going to be backing in this.
18-1 at the moment.
18 against?
18-1.
Not on.
18, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good price. It's a really strong race, obviously, but I do think the Golden Wolf's overpriced at that sort of odds.
Okay, we'll switch from horrible handicaps to horrible classic races. I couldn't think of alliteration then. C&C, something classics, yeah. Crisp classics?
Crystal clear classics.
Crystal clear classics.
It's not crystal clear though, is it?
No, not at all.
We've got this running battle here, haven't we, between Forever Together, or Together Forever as I like to call it.
Rick Astley fans, yeah.
And Magic Wand. They've met 3 times already this season. It's 2-1 in favour of Magic Wand, but the one for Forever Together was like the cup final, wasn't it? That was the Oaks, where Forever Together ran away from Magic Wand at the end. So If you saw one of their runs in isolation, it's hard to say which one's better in the sense of one just beating the other. Magic Wand was clearly superior and clearly relished the 1.5 miles and different ground at Royal Ascot because she beat Wild Illusion by 4 lengths, which is a bit further still than Forever Together beat that horse in the Oaks, but then again Wild Illusion had a penalty by then. So it's very tight between them. But there's certainly an element that Forever Together, again, why did she get beat last time? Well, I think it's pretty obvious looking at Epsom and looking at the trip, is that she was at her strongest at the finish at Epsom, which is pretty dead ground over 1.5 miles, and then she was asked to go to 1.25 miles on different ground than Pretty Polly, and just found that Urban Fox of William Haggis's too fast for her. As hard as she tried, she just didn't have the legs or the pace to go and get that horse in the straight. So she's back up to 1.5 miles, which will help. She's got cheek pieces on, which sort of fosters the feeling that they're going to ride her more positively and prominently and really make full use of her stamina. And at least there is one piece of evidence from Epsom which says, well, she's just a better horse than Magic Wand, which is at odds with how the market is saying it. And I wonder if this is a little bit of a Ryan Moore factor in that whichever horse Ryan Moore selects, that shortens in price and everything else just edges out purely because of the Ryan Moore factor.
I was just about to ask that actually. What do you think has persuaded Moore to go for Magic Wand? Do you think the rapport he's built up with her, or perhaps?
I'd love to say the rapport, but I think it's just a merciless look at which filly that he thinks is best. Because don't forget, he rode Magic Wand in the Oaks itself. She was a shorter price than Forever Together, having beaten Forever Together at Chester. I just think that he will have been so impressed with her at Royal Ascot that he'll think this is the filly that's on the up. So I think that, I'm only double guessing here, but the later starts are what is foremost in Ryan Moore's mind, in the sense that we've got a filly who won by a wide margin at Royal Ascot against a filly who was overturned at a short price at the Curragh, last time. And I think it's probably purely that which is swayed in one way or the other. But the market is reacting as if, oh, well, it's clear that this filly is the best, when actually history tells us that it's not cut and dry, that Magic Wand was a better filly than Forever Together, certainly not at 1.5 miles.
We do have a British ingredient in the Aidan O'Brien sandwich as well, in the form of Sea Class for the Haggis team. Big step up in class, but is she up to it?
Well, just read out the prices of the first three, general prices for what there are in here.
Yeah, 11 to 8 Magic Wand, 2's Sea of Class, and 7 to 2, 4 to 1 Forever Together.
Yeah, so that's the problem I have, is that I can understand and almost agree with the fact that Magic Wand is favourite, but Sea of Class shouldn't be ahead of Forever Together in the market. I think that the market overestimates the jump in class the Sea of Class is making here. So she's been really impressive in winning listed races, but the weight of the standard that these two Aidan O'Brien fillies have been in, she's going up in trip today, which might help her, but then again, it is another slight question mark. And it's one of those where sometimes we're quick to jump all over horses who do things wrong, and sometimes we just sort of turn half a blind eye in the sense that there are other things going on. But she really flashed her tail at Newbury, and it wasn't the first time that she looked a little bit kinky or quirky. And it's just in my mind that when she goes up against these brave, battle-hardened Aidan O'Brien horses, she's going to have to do something. She's going to have to push through barriers that she hasn't been to before, and that is what just sets me a little bit thinking, I think the market is overestimating that, along with the very simple fact, Nick, that Forever Together's got far better form than Sea of Class so far. So it's all built into the Timeform P, the P for potential, and the market is running with that. So again, we can talk about all these horses all day individually, but we always try to put it for you guys at home in the context of the market and what the market is saying. So I think the market is overstating the fact that Ryan Moore has selected Magic Wand, and it's underestimating the task faced by Sea of Class. And because of those two factors combined, it means that Forever Together has sort of been pushed out a little bit in terms of her prominence in the market. So we've got an Oaks winner who's forgivably defeated over 1.25 miles last time, who suddenly finds herself third favourite for the Irish Oaks, which just doesn't look right or sit right with me. And therefore I think this is just an opportunity to say, you know what, that's the wrong price with Forever Together. I'll take me medicine if Magic Wand proves a superior, even if Sea of Class goes ahead. But as we sit here now, the easiest sell And the most compelling case is to say, well, Forever Together's should be certainly second favourite, if not favourite, given that relationship at Epsom. So this is just a classic case of we'll all be able to tell you exactly after the race why everything happened. But right now, as we sit here, it doesn't sit comfortably with me. The Forever Together's third in the market.
I know betting markets aren't scenting beatings, but do you think there is a bit of emotion in there because she was turned over at short price last time that it's sort of reacting negatively? They punished her for that.
Yeah, so one of the sexy phrases is the recency bias, isn't it? In the sense of not seeing the bigger picture, just seeing the latest brushstroke. And this market is an absolute prime example of recency bias in terms of Ryan Moore selecting the last time winner over the last time defeater, and Sea of Class winning on the bridle last time, whereas Forever Together got beat by another William Haggas horse, Urban Fox. So I think this is recency bias at full play, in full view regards this race. And just if you take a step back and see the bigger picture with each of these horses, you know, I'd struggle to come to any other conclusion other than Forever Together at 4-1. It's just an opportunity for us.
Is there any chance of a filthy Aidan O'Brien Boyle over at 16-1 with Bye Bye Baby?
Always a chance, especially when she's going to be the hare in front.
Yeah.
I mean, we do see that with some regularity, more so than you might think, in terms of the Aidan O'Brien supposed second or even third string in this case, going out in front and not being caught. And I backed Bye Bye Baby for the Oaks for that sort of exact reason, and I didn't know how good Forever Together on Magic Wonder was. I think people were searching for something different, and I went for strategy bet in terms of Bye Bye Baby's going to open up around Epsom and be hard to catch. It didn't work out that way, but this is the sort of scenario and this is the sort of strategy which might just play for Bye Bye Baby. But as we sit here now, Forever Together absolutely lapped her at Epsom, and she's the one for me who's it's a bit like Red Balloons in the Super Sprint, in that Timeform top rated equals third or fourth in the market. You know, the whole point of ratings is to tell you how good these horses are under their optimum conditions, and certainly Forever Together is under her optimum conditions today, more so than she was over 10 furlongs last time.
It should be interesting. I know he was ultimately well back, but Lancaster Bomber springs to mind.
Yeah, perfect. I was struggling for that analogy, but that's absolutely perfect. Lancaster Bomber, because who did we have? Cliffs of Moher, and we had, did Defoe go over?
Yeah, it did, yeah.
And all eyes were on those two, and it was a shame Heffernan just stealthed away on Lancaster Bomber and they couldn't catch her. So that's the perfect answer and analogy for the point I was trying to make.
Brilliant. Well, we'll close on that.
Yeah.